Hey folks, welcome back to the Dev Twitch stream. My name is Nick Taylor. I'm a lead software engineer at Forum. Forum is the software that powers Dev.
And I'm Christina Gorton. I'm the open source community manager at Forum. Just want to give a shout out to Nick. As you heard, he's a lead software developer now. That was an
Nice.
upgrade for him. So yay. And we have a guest today. So Todd, tell us about yourself. Who are you?
Yeah, Todd
Give
Libby.
us all the information.
Yeah, I'm Todd Libby. I am a web developer, and I have been a web developer for over 22 years now. Focused on accessibility, front end development lately. I've done my fair share of back end development as well, and you can find me ranting and raving on Twitter a lot, and tweeting about lobster. So yeah, from Maine,
Nice.
from
East
Maine, home
Coast.
of the lobster. Yeah, East
Yes.
Coast boy.
Fan
Um,
of lobster, definitely follow Todd. He's got good lobster
Yeah,
content.
yeah, for
great
sure.
recipes.
Yeah, I guess there could be some debates about the best lobster because Maine has soft shell lobster and Atlantic Canada has hard shell. I have family from Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, so it I don't know. This stream could turn ugly at some point, possibly. Uh,
There is some beef. Yeah, no pun intended.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, it's great stuff. Thanks so much for coming on the stream, Todd. Like you mentioned,
Thanks for having me.
oh yeah, for sure, for sure. Like you said, you've been a web dev for quite a while. You're a big proponent of accessibility on the web. I'm curious, what led you to work in the accessibility space?
Back when the Web Standards Project was born, uh, and we're talking in the early 2000s, maybe even before that, I was introduced to accessibility by a few of the people that were on that um, team at the Web Standards Project, and from
Okay.
there, making sites accessible, making the internet accessible for everybody. Uh, when I started professionally, it grew to friends and family who I see uh, struggle pretty close to daily with accessing websites and applications, and the frustrations that they have and that they have had with trying to gain access. And if it's not accessible, I can see the frustration on their face,
Yeah.
which in turn ramps me up and says, I got to do more advocating for them. So I'm kind of a voice for them. Uh,
Okay.
and there's a lot of people like that in the accessibility community too. So yeah.
No, that's great. Yeah. So, I, accessibility is like a massive topic. It's part of front-end developer work, which is where I focus on, and I feel like honestly, I've only scratched the tip of the iceberg in accessibility. I think I'm doing okay, but like, there's just so much like uh, without going into like tons and tons of details, like what are some big things that stand out in the accessibility space?
Well, the first one lately has been color contrasted text, and that's a big one. I talked about that at a conference, and I've written about it, and I've spoken about it as well. Um, that was according to the WebAIM report, the WebAIM Million report.
Okay.
Um, color contrast of text was the number one uh, bad guy, I will say, for accessibility
Okay.
Yeah.
blunders and
Yeah.
bloopers. Empty alt text for images that need alt text for screen readers to read.
Okay.
Forms. There's a lot of stuff with forms as well that accessibility wise that you know those users that need to access that form can't access.
Yeah.
So And then other things too, without going through the entire list, which would take about 5 streams. There's a lot. There's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to kind of touch on some of those then. Let's talk a little bit about some of those. So like with color contrast, I agree. It's a big deal. I don't necessarily have that many like vision problems or things like that. I have astigmatism, which is why I wear glasses, but some websites you go on and you're just like, what were they thinking? But I have people in my life, like my husband's colorblind. I have other people who have vision problems and stuff. And these are a big deal. So where I know you've done a talk on this, and I've just linked your stuff. Where can you kind of point people to for those types of things of like, how do you check these things? How do you make sure that's good? How as developers, because this is something that I kind of had to learn, how as developers do we talk to designers about this? Because designers might have like, an opinion on the colors that we know, hey, this isn't accessible.
Yeah. My first, the thing I would first do is to take those teams that you have and say, okay, we need to think about people on the other side of the glass. And that means, bringing accessibility in from kickoff to handoff as far as the project goes, and even after handoff. Accessibility is a evolutionary thing, just like the web is. So, take the design for example, the color contrast. You take the designers and you go, okay, your colors don't quite match what we need as far as color contrast goes. Can we talk about maybe, reaching some sort of compromise with colors, for instance? Hopefully those designers will be like very open to that and say, okay, I get it. Let's, try to work something out. That kind of a deal. Getting every team in, no matter what team it is at a company, getting them into the process early, the earlier the better. And even the stakeholders as well, managers, stakeholders, PMs, that sort of deal. Everybody on board, everybody in 100%. And then you've got yourself a very easy workflow from there on.
Yeah. Have you felt like you've had pushback anywhere, any projects you've worked on for accessibility? Because I know this, I know from like, just my little bit with accessibility, but also people I know in the space that work in accessibility. That's often a big thing. Do you feel like that's happened to you, and how have you addressed that?
Yes, I have had that happen. And I can't stress that enough. I think everybody who's done accessibility has had that happen. With me, it was the stakeholder. I'm going to try to do this as diplomatically as possible. The stakeholder I spoke to, I wanted to introduce accessibility guidelines and design system for this company I used to work for. And from the outset, the stakeholder said to me, "We don't have disabled users." And that nearly knocked me back in my chair.
Yeah.
And I said, "Yes, we do.
Yeah.
You don't know that."
Yeah.
Then I had to explain situational, temporary, those kinds of disabilities. And even had to tell him, those eyeglasses you're wearing, those are an assistive technology. So
yep.
I've had that, and somebody gave me a very great piece of advice when I spoke to him, and I said, and I let him know what was going on and everything with that situation, and he said, when they push back a little harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people say, well, I can't push back at all. Yes, you can.
Yeah.
Maybe if we talk about it later, I mean, you get to the point where you go, okay, well, and then you have what I call the Domino's pizza card.
Yeah. I know exactly what
I get
So
the reference, but maybe we can talk about the
Yep.
dominoes briefly after.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, that's, I have experienced that. I think we've all experienced that in the accessibility community as far as pushback goes. And push back a little harder. And a lot of the times, for me anyways, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but for me, pushing back a little bit more, knowing what I know anyways,
Mm-hmm.
has helped me kind of get that advocacy through to stakeholders, PMs, yada, yada, yada. So yeah.
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 I want to quickly, before we go to the next question, because you mentioned this and I've seen it be a big impact on people who don't even think about it with accessibility. Because when I have taught students a lot of times and I'd ask them questions for like interviews and things, they'd be like, oh yeah, people who are blind or hard of hearing. People don't think about what you mentioned, situational and temporary as well. Can you kind of give a little bit of examples of those for people who might not know what that is? And I think it kind of sparks, I think, a light bulb in a lot of people's heads when we talk about it.
Yeah. Situational. You're outside and you're trying to, text somebody back on your phone and the sun's shining on the screen. There's a little temporary situational blindness right there, or you can barely see what you're trying to text to somebody or whatever. You're sitting at your desk and you've got your child on your lap and they're, bouncing up a storm and,
Yep.
you're trying to respond to an email or whatnot. And, you're kind of all over the place. That's a situational as well. A broken arm, you know, uh, uh, you know, maybe one more here. Using the keyboard for navigating through a web page, for instance, too.
Yeah.
There are a lot more
Mm-hmm.
disabilities other than, deaf or blind.
Yeah.
A lot more. There's cognitive, disabilities. There's motor skill disabilities. There's a lot of things that I haven't even, thought about before as well.
Mm-hmm.
My last flight that I took in 2019, I saw a young man on the airplane using a pen with his, I don't know if it was an iPad, but it was a tablet. And he was using a pen with his mouth
Yeah.
to navigate around the page, as well as screen reader, assistive technology as far as screen reader goes, and voice recognition software with it as well. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Definitely.
Yeah. So, I mean, like you said, there's so many things to think about accessibility, but I'm even thinking like a lot of the stuff that accessibility and like in like a web page provides for obviously folks that need it, but it's also like I'm thinking of even stuff where accessibility is an issue. Like think of somebody doing data entry. If you can't tab with the keyboard and like fill in things, like I mean, it kind of makes me laugh in the sense that if a company says they don't want to put money towards that, meanwhile the person doing data entry is like clicking the mouse in each, there's like, I don't know, there's just
yeah,
so much stuff about it. Getting back to the color contrast, there's a few things I think that might intimidate folks new to the space. Is
mm-hmm.
there's the Wcag spec. It's like kind of like just reading like a massive novel. Like I remember I had to read Gone with the Wind in grade 7, and it was like, I don't know, this big. So I can see from absorbing all this information perspective, it could be daunting or like just, oh my God, that's so much. But
Yeah,
it can still be approachable, right? Like there's
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It is a daunting read. Yes, I
Yeah.
totally agree. What's being worked on now as far as the W3C and WCAG goes, as far as WCAG 3, which will be, they've already worked on the bronze level, first public working draft, and that had to do with bronze. And of course, I'm probably butchering this, but silver and gold. There's going to be a lot of changes. First of all, I should say.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When WCAG 3 comes down the line, and that's probably going to be in 2023. I think was the date given, right somewhere in there.
Okay.
It's going to be a lot more easier, hopefully, for people to read. You can go to the first public working draft right now, and you can look through what they're doing. And let me try to find that. Actually, I'll find that later for you to throw that link up.
I think I found one. It's on the W3org site, WCAG 3 intro, maybe. I popped it in the chat. Maybe take a peek at that, Christina. I think that's it. But you were mentioning though about this. You were talking about bronze, silver, and gold. I can kind of get that in the context of like a sport, like gold being the best. But it's the levels of acceptance for these standards? Is that what those are, or what is it exactly?
So basically what's going to happen is what we know now of A, AA, and AAA will be bronze, silver, and gold.
Okay.
As far as what we have to do to meet each requirement is still being worked on. Okay. And I don't want to go too far into it and say the wrong thing and then have somebody come back and say, that's not what's that's not what happened. So, but it's I do know that it's going to be a lot. Hopefully, like I said, it's going to be a lot easier for people to go in and say, "Oh, I get it." I can go in and say, visual contrasted text. I get what is being said. I can read this and understand it better than I could with 2.x, for instance. Okay. I'm keeping my fingers crossed because I know, and I actually talked about this on Twitter with somebody the other day. There is a lot of confusion when it comes to certain things and levels being met with certain issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know I'm gonna keep coming back to the color contrast just because I know it's fresh in your mind and it's something you've done a lot of work in. I think we had a conversation either on Twitter or somewhere else, but the color contrast algorithm is changing, meaning it's like it's gonna be stricter is not the word. I don't know how to word it exactly, but
well. It's going to be a lot more precise. I think anyway.
Okay.
The scoring system will change. So right now, color contrast of text is kind of a contentious debate with some people. It's not the contrast of the text itself. Mm-hmm. It's how our brains process what we're looking at.
Okay.
So when you're looking at a font, what's happening is that color of the font is being judged on the background of the font.
Yeah.
And that's a really old way of, when that spec, I will call it, first came out. Mm-hmm. Now we're going to be looking at width of font, weight of font, there will be a lot of different things involved with the scoring system, which I've tried the beta color checker and it's phenomenal. It does a great job. The scoring, I believe, is going to be better than it has been. Because I did a website a while back for a company. They had a kind of a slate blue, dark blue background. Their branding was unfortunately orange text.
No.
So when I ran ran the DevTools in Firefox, their color contrast checker, for instance. Chrome also has good color contrast checker in their DevTools as well.
Okay.
When I ran that, it failed. But when I ran Wave, which is a browser extension from WebAIM, that passed. So you have your false positives and your false negatives. That kind of thing, hopefully with the new scoring system, will kind of be, okay, we're going to take all these factors into consideration, and it's going to be a more precise measurement of, or scoring of, what it needs to do to pass standards.
Yeah, and you gave me a nice softball to do a segue. So you were talking about some tooling. So I was gonna say, like, for people who might find what we've talked about so far, like, oh my God, that's a lot of stuff. Like, there's tooling out there. You mentioned some. If I was wondering if you could just maybe talk a bit about some of those tooling. I know there's browser extensions. There's other tools as well.
That was absolutely, I was going to segue into that too, because I wanted to ask you, do you have a favorite one that you like or feel like works the best, or do you have multiple that you tend to use?
I will say I use multiple tools. First off, I will say my preferred. I won't say my favorite. I'll say my preferred tool.
Very diplomatic.
That's what I'm shooting for here. My preferred tool is the Axe tools for, and those are the add-ons for the browser. For Firefox and Chrome has them.
Okay.
Yeah.
That does a very comprehensive check into a web page's accessibility. Doesn't do everything, mind you, but it does a lot. Then I use Wave. Wave I usually use from WebAIM, which is another extension for Chrome and Firefox. I have
that one.
Yeah. What I do with that one, I open it up, I look at the scoring to see, there's X amount of contrast issues. That's the first thing I always go to when I look at a site.
Okay.
Is how many contrast issues there are. And then I do, there's empty tags, there's warnings, there's errors, and go sort through it that way. Firefox has a good in their DevTools, the accessibility tab. There are you can look at the different visual deficiencies, as far as you have protanopia and tritanopia and all the others. You can see through the eyes. Hopefully it's I don't know if it's probably, I would say it was accurate. I don't know. I don't have any of those, disabilities, but it's a very accurate representation of what somebody with, say, color blindness sees. And color blindness is not necessarily blindness. Color blindness is you just can't see colors. And somebody tweeted out last night, I saw, I'll have to go back and get that. There's colorblind is kind of a contentious wording of it all as well. And I wish I had that tweet handy. But anyways, yeah, those are the tools I use. I also use Lighthouse.
Yeah.
That seems, as far as the accessibility side goes, that's pretty accurate as well. And then a lot of manual testing. Test with your keyboard. Don't use a mouse for a day. Try that.
Yeah.
That's difficult.
Yeah.
That is very difficult.
No, I'm laughing.
You have.
That was contentious at our work for a little bit.
Yeah. So, just to give a bit of context. So Marcy Sutton, who who's an accessibility expert, she worked with our team for about 6 weeks, and it was during Hacktoberfest I got the idea of having a no mouse Fridays. Uh, and I can't remember if it's because I came across her package. She has a package on NPM called No Dash Mouse Dash Fridays. So I implemented it in our project. I have a PR up still. I am gonna finish it, but the 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 contentious point was not because people don't want to help with accessibility. That wasn't the reasoning. There was a few reasons. External contributors, because we're an open source project, so external contributors, they like say somebody doing something in the back end comes in and they want to just see their thing working. They have they don't know anything about accessibility, and it's not really related to what they're doing. So, and some folks on the team too are like that because it's not related to their direct work per se.
Mhm.
So I haven't finished it yet. It does work, but I'm gonna add a flag so that it's more the front end team can use it explicitly, and if others want to,
Mhm.
they can. But
Mhm.
it'll just be like when you start up the application, I'll probably just create an alias for the front end team. So when you run it, it will always have that enabled. And when it hits Friday, you only have keyboard enabled. And yeah, like you were kind of alluding to, it can be frustrating because if you're tabbing around and you're like, why is it not tabbing into that thing? It's like tab, whoa, wait, no, here, and it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
so like the whole point of it is to get you frustrated because the frustration will lead you to
Yep.
fix it. So yeah, so that's why I was giggling a bit. So I am gonna get that in. It's just I've had a lot going on, so work
Yeah.
wise. But it's my PR is up if you want to check in the repo. So, but yeah. Anyways, I digress.
I think that's a little bit of a segue into a question we have in the chat because we were talking about
Okay.
front end and back end. So the question is accessibility a front end issue only? And if not, do you have examples of accessibility issues for back end devs?
It is not a front end issue only. It encompasses everything to do with design and development, and even branching out to SEO and stuff like that
Mm-hmm.
as well. Do I have examples for the back end? Use semantic markup. So when you're creating let's just say when you're creating a React component, use semantic markup.
Yeah.
You don't need to use CSS and JS. I mean, that's a contentious debate as well. I think we're going to throw the word contentious around a lot today.
Yeah.
But yeah, back end and back end and front end, they go hand in hand, and we all need to work with each other. You
Mm-hmm.
know, there's no front end without the back end. There's no back end without the front end. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I actually have when I used to work because I would work on the front end mainly, and a lot of times I would be getting components from the back end. Like they had worked on stuff and they connected things to the back end, and they had created the components or different things, and it was exactly that. I had to go back and I had to create like the semantic markup for them because they didn't do that.
Yeah.
And so if they had just been aware of that already, we wouldn't have to go back in this like back and forth of like, all right, you gave that to me, it works. Now I gotta do the semantic markup. Well, now maybe this thing that you connected to is not gonna work the way you were expecting, and having to go back and forth that way was a bit time consuming. Yeah.
Yeah, and I say semantic markup, not trying to put anybody's skill level down. Is just that when you understand progressive enhancement and semantic markup, the project is going to go so much smoother and so much faster and cost the company less time and money
Yeah.
when everybody's on board with accessibility. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah.
So as far as accessibility issues for the backend devs, it's just that a good instance again would be that I've come across lately was a form component in a React app that you have things to help screen readers and voice technologies to read that form, read the form label, read the form field for the user. There was none of that in this project. So what I had to do is educate and advocate and say, okay, this needs to be put in there, the semantic markup, and by that I don't mean blast it with ARIA labels, because the first rule of ARIA Fight Club is don't use ARIA. So,
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just bottom line, they go hand in hand. Semantic markup would be the probably, and maybe I'm forgetting something, but for me, semantic markup to answer the question.
I can think, because I'm not sure if Aurélie meant like maybe back-end stuff like serving an API or something too, but there could be that too, where because
Yep.
there's a couple things. I have a concrete example of the semantic markup issue. I found an issue in Rails, Ruby on Rails. So there's like I said, we work on an open source project forum. We have an administrative section in the application, and I was working with open source contributor Dominic Duffin. He fixed an issue in there, and then we were looking through things, and we found another issue, and I figured out that because a lot of because I used to work in .NET as well, or ASP.NET, so they have like primitives in the back end that generate your HTML components, but you would say like, this is my panel, but it would generate a div, for example, or something like that.
Yep.
And in the Rails, there's this helper to have like a date time kind of component. And what it does is it renders, I think, 3 or 4 drop downs. So you can choose like a, month, day, year, and I think a time. And those are all semantic markup in the sense that they're select boxes, but the way it generates it adds labels, but the label ID is kind of meant to be globally for all of them, and so it actually is never connected to any of them. So, because like for example, the first select box, like say the component had an ID of, I don't know, event date, the first select box would be, the ID would be event date 1, then it would be event date 2, and so on. And then the label was just called event date, so the label was never connected to anything. And it's a bigger issue because that's, unless there's something I'm missing in Ruby on Rails, I think it's an actual bug with one of the helpers in their form components that generates it that way. So that's like another kind of like example of what you were saying about like the semantic markup being important. There's like, I don't know, I almost feel like we can just talk about examples of stuff and like why why go the semantic way. Like you were talking about not using area by default because for example, like a label tag is a label. You don't need to say area label. There are use cases for it, but yeah, I was thinking if we could talk about some examples, like concrete ones I can think of are like, check boxes and radio buttons, like to get the focus and stuff. Is there some examples you can think of where you've run into where you're like, oh, like kind of like, oh my gosh, no, that's
Buttons.
why.
I'd like to answer that with a yes.
I see it all the time. Buttons.
Christina just nailed it. Buttons. Please use a button tag.
Yes.
That's what they are there for. Divs are a container. Anchor tags are to take you to another page or another website. Spans are used for text, inline text, and buttons are for buttons. Divs are not for buttons. Spans are not for buttons. Anchor tags are not for buttons.
I'm just laughing because I've seen Christina shake her head.
Well, here's the thing. I created this course recently for LinkedIn on CSS animations, and I was going through all these examples because I was like looking through different ones. And I was like, these are really cool. the way people are animating this, because I wanted to show people how to animate a button, and every single one was using like a div, and I'm like, why? Why are they using divs? Because I think a lot of people had this perspective of like, well, it's just easier to style the div, right? Because they were wanting to do all these cool things. There's some things you have to take away with a button when you're styling. Like, there might be some defaults that you don't want, but you can do all the same things with a button that you can do with a div, and it's semantic. So that was like, it was just one of those things that I was like going through every single example. So in my course, we're using a button, but like, why? Why are they all divs?
Yeah.
And that's also going real quick. If say a boot camp or a school is teaching this kind of thing, accessibility is often overlooked.
Yeah.
They don't teach it. So, when you say, you are teaching with buttons, thank you. Because I there's so many times I've said, just use a button. That's the native HTML element is a button.
Yeah.
And you're not trying to, guide the div wherever you want it to go, and then you're screaming at CSS being the fault because something's not working or something doesn't look correctly.
Yeah.
So use the button.
Can you one more time for everyone just say the difference again? Because this was something students always had a problem with when when I was teaching in different areas. I taught in a boot camp for a little bit. Is the difference between a link and a button? Like, people wanted to use a button, they thought that's what you're supposed to, and they probably should have been using a link and vice versa. And I know you just said it. Can you kind of say it again so that people can hear that?
So a button, when you press a button, does something. Whether it submits a form field, whether it, you sign up for a newsletter, for instance, that's what a button does. Yeah. A link takes you somewhere. It takes you to Todd's website or Nick's website or Christina's website. A span is for text that's in line. I've seen spans before, and I can't tell you how many times my head hurts from seeing spans used for buttons. Please don't do that. I beg of people, please don't do that.
I want to throw up the Bernie Sanders meme. I am once again asking you.
Or spam display block.
Exactly. And a div is a container. You have, for instance, a section with the section tag in HTML5, and then you have divs in that section that correspond with certain components that you have to hold something in that section. So that's what a div does. Buttons are buttons. Like when you turn your laptop on and off, that's your button.
Yeah.
It does something. That button will perform a function of some sort.
Yeah. And we laugh about this little, I know we're all kind of laughing right now. If you went back to like old code of mine, like I'm on CodePen, maybe even old courses, you will probably see things that I've done that is wrong. We all kind of go through learning experience and learning things. So we're laughing a little and being like, don't do this. We all have been there and having to learn. So just keep that in mind, everyone.
If we're doing confessional, I have done div soup in the past. So
yeah.
Oh, believe me, up here in Maine, I do I've done div chowder.
Div chowder.
And, yeah, that's what I call it, div chowder. And I recently found a disc that I had, and it had some old work on it. And I was, if we're doing confessional, I'm guilty. Yeah. I'm really, really guilty of some heinous crimes as far as semantic HTML goes too. So.
Yeah, I have to stop myself when I like look at my old like code pins and things that I have to be like, I don't have time to go back and fix all of this right now. Like, I just gotta do better as I go forward.
Yeah, that's all we can do. That's all we can do. Learn as you go and do a lot better. It's, I every day have to remember that. Yeah.
And like we were saying, I thought when Christina was gonna ask you to reiterate before, you were just gonna say use the button. Use the button, but aside from,
I almost did.
Aside from like, obviously a button is semantically correct for an action, like you were saying. Another reason to use it is because there's so many things out of the box that come with semantic elements, right? Like if I were to make a button that's a div or like a some kind of custom drop down, you know, yes, I could probably get the click event and like hovering, there's ways to do it, but you're almost kind of reinventing the wheel. And I know I've seen a lot of this like earlier on in my web dev career, because historically styling form components, like specifically select boxes, was very problematic.
Yeah.
And I know Todd remembers this, but Internet Explorer, they used to be ActiveX components, and there's z-index issues, all kinds of stuff. But yeah, uh, I'm rambling on there. Sorry, I don't know where I was going.
I do remember Internet Explorer. I remember Internet Explorer 3, 4, 5, 5.5. 5.5 was horrible. 5.5 was probably the worst, and that's, I think, right around when conditional commenting came out, which was
Oh yeah.
another story.
Yeah, for those that are newer to dev, conditional comments were literally like I don't know if everybody's seen HTML comments. You do like less than, exclamation mark, dash dash, and then put something in. Internet Explorer was able to, you could kind of almost put like a conditional expression in there, and you could load certain things based on it. And I remember I I was working when I used to work in e-commerce. One of the back end guys was looking in the code, or in the markup or the template, and he's like, "What is this?" And I was like, "You don't want to know. You don't want to know."
It was a quick fix and a band-aid for making things work in Internet Explorer at that time.
I'm a baby dev compared to you all, so I didn't have to experience this trauma.
You're
It's
very fortunate because it was. I mean, I didn't have much trouble with it, but when I did, it was trouble. So
Yeah.
yeah. I'm sure you have opinions on this, but Todd, but because like I remember, like I did a lot of work in like Internet Explorer was like kind of became the standard, but there was Netscape prior to Mozilla, and then you know it's kind of funny. There's a lot of things that exist now that actually came from Internet Explorer. It's like people that love inner HTML, that came from Internet Explorer. Uh,
yep,
Divs came from Internet Explorer, because there used to be something in Netscape called layers, which was different. There's I can't remember. Yeah, that's the book. You remember Dynamic HTML book, the like the super thick book there?
yep.
There was,
I yep.
yeah, all kinds
I
of
had
stuff
that
in there.
book at one point. Yeah, yeah. It's like that meme where it has the big, huge book, and then
Yeah,
the other side has a little tiny book, and it differs, but
yeah,
that's that
The
one picture
JavaScript,
there.
the like essentials
yeah.
versus
The
like
good parts.
JavaScript, like the good parts. That's what it is.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So I know we
I
went a
mean,
bit
web.
on a tangent, but
Well, web standards back then were more of, um, there was more advocacy for web standards back then than what I see now. And there's still people like Jeffrey Zellman and others that still advocate for web standards, and it should be a thing that young devs especially these days, know. And really, you know, I see frustration all the time, whether it be on Twitter or anywhere else. And I just say, if they only knew about web standards and accessibility, if they put them in their workflow, they might not be as super stressed and you know freaking out about things as I've seen anyways. I mean, web standards are still important to this day too.
Yeah.
So and that
oh, for
starts with
sure.
semantic markup and progressive enhancement.
So what are
Yeah.
your favorite, besides, okay, maybe not even besides. What are your favorite resources for people? So people new to this, or people struggling, like you said, or people just kind of like they want to start doing more with accessibility because they feel like they should. What are your favorite resources for that we could share with others?
No pressure,
A
but we
list
need the whole
apart.
list.
List apart.
We're gonna be here a while.
Yeah.
A list apart is probably one of the top 5.
Getting that.
The Mozilla Docks, the MDN Docs, those are another one. I'm trying to think of others, and I'm blanking right now.
Okay, you could always say them later too if they come to mind.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many resources out there. I mean, if you go on like Google or DuckDuckGo and you type in "learn accessibility," it's like throwing a stone at the broadside of a barn. You're gonna hit something. You're gonna find something. People are more than welcome to at me on Twitter and say hey, what's your list? And a few nights ago, I just gave out a list to somebody as well for accessibility stuff. If you go to, let's say, DQ Systems website, which is dq.com, Level Access has good resources as well.
Sorry to interrupt you for
The
a second,
Google
but
developers.
the DQ they have a university, I believe. Like, it's like some kind of program you can take there?
Yeah, there's different courses you can also study up for the CPAC accessibility certification as well, and I think it's IAAP as well. I think it is, but you can do that on there as well. Yeah, that's those DQ and Level Access and WebAIM as well. WebAIM.org. Those are the 3 top resources. Then you want to go on Twitter and find out who does accessibility. I mean, there's a ton of people in the community.
Yeah, I mean,
Eric Bailey.
We'll say the obvious. Give Todd a follow if you haven't already, too.
Yes, I just dropped his Twitter in the chat. So,
if you don't mind being bombarded with lobster roll tweets, then please do.
It's a bonus.
It's a bonus. And the recipe of the week. No, I'm just kidding. Though
I just want to shout out that we have people all over the world right now, which is pretty cool. Someone from Spain, someone from Italy. I don't know where the rest of you all are at, but it's nice to see people all over. Hello.
And how is the div chowder in Spain? That's what I want to know.
Oh yeah, there you go.
I've got the recipe for div chowder on that disc. But there's people on Twitter as well, other than me, Eric Bailey, Leonie Watson, Adrian Rosselli, and a host of other people that in the accessibility community that are great and willing to answer questions. It's very open community.
I think that's actually how I met you, I believe. I forget I can't remember where I met you originally, Todd, but I mean online because I've never met you in real life, but I can't remember if I had asked you a question about accessibility on Twitter or if maybe it was through virtual coffee group. I don't remember. But
I think we met through a Zoom chat, but I don't think it was virtual coffee. I think it was something else.
Yeah.
And I can't remember. No, you know what? It was Nicole's.
Oh yeah. Nicole Archambault's. What'd she call it? I forget the name of it. Anyways.
They just hang out at night.
Yeah.
Zoom after dark.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. It's not as shady as it sounds.
It's okay. Yeah. I just recently did a JavaScript after dark thing with this stuff.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I see those tweeted out every now and then. Is it just kind of like a fun evening to just talk about the
It's
language?
like a variety show type thing that they do.
Okay.
So like there's like little like quick little skits that you just kind of do together. They just
Okay.
rapid fire like ask questions and stuff like you might see on like a talk show. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've seen them do Jeopardy as well. Or is that just they tweet those out sometime? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Yeah.
Circling back.
Yeah, exactly. I can't believe we still haven't really talked about lobster, but we'll get there. We'll get there.
You let me know, and I'm ready.
I think you should
Um,
share some recipes for those who are not that great at making lobster.
yeah.
And,
Start
yeah.
start with the roll. Always start with the roll and do a main roll. Get your lobster meat, toss it in some mayo, real light mayo, throw it in a bun, make sure the bun's buttered and grilled,
Mm.
and you're off to the races. Then we can get into like bisque and chowder and what else? I made a lobster, kind of a seafood chowder with lobster and shrimp and stuff.
Okay.
And then your lobster pies and
Yeah.
Lots of.
They have like a mariscos, which is just seafood soup here. That's everyone like makes at all the little restaurants. But it's
Okay.
got lobster in there, but it's got like everything. It's a little bit of everything.
I don't know.
I've even seen lobster on pizza because I just saw Chris Mars's shout out for Detroit style. So
I I pretty much
Yeah.
eat anything. I don't know if I'd want to have lobster on pizza, but I've never tried it, so I can't say no, you know? Uh,
I was a bit frightened when I saw that. So as a purist, I kind of shied away from it.
yeah.
Who knows? I may try it one day.
The question is too, is it real lobster or is it pollock? That's the other thing, you
Mm.
know? Because there is a big difference. Fake lobster it's not the same.
No,
But yeah,
it's not.
no, for sure.
Well, we got a lobster chat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like all of a sudden it's like the stream's doubled because we're talking about lobster now.
People are saying they're hungry, so there's that. Were we going to talk about web components? There's a question. Just saw the retweet. Did I miss any talk of web components? I don't remember if that was something we were going to talk about, but that was just in the chat, just to let you all know.
Touch upon it, yeah.
Yeah.
I
So you
feel
did
like it's a
kind of
spicy
miss
topic.
a little bit. We will have this recording on YouTube, so if you want to watch it later. There we go. So yeah. Do we want to kind of wrap up? Do we want to keep talking about things, Nick? I'll let you to be the decider on that. If you
Well,
want to ask more questions.
I think we could probably talk for a little bit longer. We got a pretty good chunk of folks in the stream right now, so
I mean, I'm happy to keep talking. So
yeah.
go for it.
Happy to keep talking.
I
That
think
was me just getting us off the lobster talk. Go for it.
yeah, exactly. All right, let's talk about scallops now. No.
I'm
Yeah.
hungry too right now, so if we're gonna keep talking, no more food talk.
Yeah, I gotta eat lunch too. I had a bowl of cereal, but no, I think because we got a good chunk of folks in the stream right now, it'd be kind of fun maybe just to talk about maybe some examples of other things we could maybe correct and stuff. Like these are, I know these are things that you consider pretty basic, like for yourself now these days, Todd. But like we can talk about forms. I think forms are important because like when I always laugh when people are saying like, yeah, I've got this new app and stuff, but it's like at the end of the day everything is literally a form on the web. Even if you
Yeah.
have fancy animations, all kinds of stuff going on, at the end of the day, submit, something's getting sent to the back end, and so forms have been like pretty much a staple since the web started, and people keep doing them wrong.
Yeah. Which
You
I
know,
noticed when I was teaching them. I think even things that we kind of touched on before, the IDs, like, and labels and stuff like that. A lot of people just don't even know what those are for and why they're supposed to have them and how they connect. And I think if we just kind of touch on some of that stuff, it'd be good.
Yeah, you have, screen readers and voice technologies that are assistive need to read those forms, like I mentioned before. You have the label that you visually see, like first name and then the field, but then you have the programmatic label as well, and that is the one that's read to the screen reader, or something like Dragon Naturally, for instance, that somebody's using.
Okay, yeah.
Those things are often forgotten. They need to match. If those things don't match, then it's going to cause confusion, and when that causes confusion, I've seen it, and I know a number of other people have seen it, where you see that frustration, and as I mentioned before, of that person just wanting to just throw in the towel and give up and say, heck with this. I'm not going to fill out this form. Another thing too is, if you don't need to use a form, don't use a form.
Yeah.
Good point.
I see a lot of that happen. But to get back to the form, that I wrote that article that's up on CSS Tricks that I put in the Discord.
Again.
Okay. Yeah, we'll drop that in the chat for sure.
What I recommend people do is just take a minute, use a screen reader, whether it's VoiceOver for Mac, for instance, or whether it's NVDA, which is the one I use for Windows, or for Linux, if you're a Linux user, there's Orca.
Okay.
Use that. Use it on a form field, or an entire form for that matter, and see what you find out, and take notes as you go through that form. Do those labels that are visible match up with the programmatic label? And you'll find a lot of times, like I have anyway, where they don't match up, causes confusion. Throw that into the mix when you have somebody that has, anxiety, for instance, or a cognitive or motor skill issue.
Yeah, Krista Mars dropped in the chat there, and he was saying also, when you're using a screen reader, try not to look at the screen, because I guess it will coerce you into what the right text is, probably. It's a good knowledge nugget.
Yep.
Thanks for dropping that, Chris.
Yeah. I don't look at the screen when matter of fact, I turn on my Mac here, I turn down so that the screen is black.
Okay.
While using a screen reader. Let me tell you how difficult that is. We talked about No Mouse Fridays. Using a screen reader when you can't see the screen is absolutely difficult for me.
Yeah.
Frustrating. So yeah.
No, what was I going to say about that? Oh yeah, no. The voiceover. It's not only we've been talking about, semantic markup to help with these assistive technologies, or just making your web page better, but there's also like wording as well. Like, if you could have a label and it just says, like, I don't know, say you've got like a restaurant and you want to filter by food types, and all it says is filter. If you tab onto that with the screen reader, it's just going to say filter. So you could, like, maybe for a visual person, seeing filter or something like that, it's pretty obvious. But I think this is maybe a good case where you would do like area dash label to enhance it for the screen reader, maybe, or I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
You can do that, but the biggest culprit I see is a button that says click here.
Okay, yeah.
Click where? Where am I going?
Exactly. What am I clicking? A button. Okay, so my form on my website, my contact form says, I'm paraphrasing here because I don't remember the exact wording I use, but it says something like, click this to submit to the form to Todd, something like that.
Yeah.
something with a little instruction into it.
Yeah. Did we
And
say?
like, you know,
That's a
I
good
see,
point. And I think that's something you just mentioning that. I don't even think about that sometimes. But yeah, it's exactly like contacts and stuff like that. You're just like, it's like click or contact or,
Yep.
trying to send someone somewhere else in the button. That's a great point. That's a great point.
Yeah.
yeah, saw Chris had said, wording and language is very important, and that is an understatement.
Yeah.
Because somebody with a cognitive disability can get very easily confused as to what is click here. What is this button? Why am I clicking this button? Where is it taking me? What is it doing?
Yeah.
But so
Yeah. No. It reminds me of the local newspaper here in Montreal, because that they have all these adverts where it's always like words matter, and it really does, because if you don't have the context of something, especially like if you're tabbing through your black screen there, Todd, you're like, yeah, filter, what, and I don't know if I
Click
missed it,
here.
but yeah, but the same thing with hyperlinks, like like here's an article about this, click here, and that's the hyperlink text, because when the screen reader reads it, it's
Yeah.
just gonna, yeah, there's no context
That's a
whatsoever.
bad habit I've tried very hard to
yeah,
and I still do it sometimes with this whole I usually try to say the name of like the article or something if I'm gonna, instead of putting like, and you can read this article here, which I think a lot of us do. That's
Yeah, I've been guilty of a click here link, if we're going back on confessional.
yep.
So
Oh yeah. Yeah, me too.
Guilty as charged.
yeah.
Uh,
Yep.
descriptive links. Yeah, descriptive links. So I will take, for instance, I won't say click here, click this link or whatever. I'll say,
Mhm.
uh, you know, navigate to my article about, color contrast, for instance, and
Yeah,
make that the entire link.
Yeah. Yeah.
for sure.
That's one good thing I kind of learned about with like documentation and technical writing, because that's something they kind of like talk about a lot. Is just like, don't put here. That's not descriptive at all. Which, again, I still
Yeah,
do a lot of times, and I kind of a habit I'm having to get out of. But it's like one of those things that you just don't think about for
Yeah, yeah,
people who can see and stuff like that. It's like, okay, where we
yeah. But
I
even
think
if
that's.
you,
exactly.
yeah.
Go ahead,
No, I was
Nick.
gonna say, even if you can see it, like I forget where I read this or whatever, but like instruction manuals are very important, obviously, for things,
Mhm.
and like I really wish I could remember where I got this from, but they were saying at some point, as an exercise, try and write instructions on how to tie your shoes, like tying the
Or make a
bow and
peanut butter and jelly
everything.
sandwich. I've
Like,
watched that. Like, yeah.
because like obviously we're all grown-ups, we've been tying our shoes for years now. It's you don't even think about it when you do it, but imagine if you have to go back to the basics. Okay, so make a loop, do like you're not gonna get it right, I'm pretty sure, and it's
A really
it's
funny video about this. This dad was trying to teach his kids this, like the description, and he was having them like explain how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And this poor little girl, she would do these instructions. She'd give it to his dad, and he'd start doing it, and it'd be like all wrong. She'd go over and over and over again until they finally got it. Videos like that on YouTube if you want to see how difficult it really is.
yeah. So put the peanut butter on the outside of the bread. No. Yeah.
He's like not opening the jar, or not putting the knife in the peanut. It's just it's a lot.
But it is a fun exercise, because I find that it's somewhat related, but like when you write a blog post about something you learned, going through those motions of
Mm-hmm.
like really
Yeah.
thinking about what you learned, you really your brain kind of clicks in overdrive a bit to kind of really summarize things well when you ran into an issue or something you learned. So it's
Yeah. I think these descriptives are a good like segue also to alt text and just like images, because I see that was something I had to learn myself, and I still question myself all the time. Am I doing this right?
Mhm.
I remember someone at some point in my journey just saying, "Don't put this is a picture of," or "this is an image of." I think a lot of us do that.
yeah.
Can you kind of give a little bit of example, or maybe just point people to like good alt text of an image? What should we be putting?
Yeah. So good alt text is descriptive but not lengthy. So, for instance, you know, when I tweet a picture of a lobster roll, I just say a lobster roll, and if it has chives on it, I say a lobster roll with chives.
Yeah.
Not this is a lobster roll with lightly mayo and in a nice golden buttered bun, making it sound like a commercial for a lobster roll.
Yeah.
You know,
I want to eat one now.
Painting for everyone.
now I do too.
No, I think that's a
So
great point because that was one of those things where for a little bit, I was trying to be more descriptive on this is like painting, and then someone mentioned to me, a screen reader's reading this to someone, and they're reading this like really long thing that you have that they just need the information so that they can go on to like the next thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's
yeah, and also as you mentioned, Christina, you don't have to say it's a picture of, because that person already knows it's a picture of something. That that redundancy, omit that, and that gives you more room for the alt text, basically. So instead of a picture of a lobster roll, lightly mayo and bun, blah blah blah, you just two lobster rolls in a plastic case, for instance, which was my last meal.
Delicious rolls, sweet delicious
Yes.
rolls. Yeah.
Decorative text does not need alt text. It needs an empty alt. So alt equals double quotes, but it doesn't need, horizontal rule with flowers. No, you don't need that. There are other, if it's informational or if it's a picture of something, you want to describe that picture to that person using the assistive technology. If it's, a horizontal rule with puppies, it's decorative. You don't need any alt, just an empty alt on decorative. And there are different, there are other images, kind of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Classifications of images as well.
Okay.
But mostly they use alt text as well.
In terms of I don't know if you have the answer for this because I just thought of it now because like I know you are supposed to use, like you were saying, the empty alt text for decorative stuff, but is there any reason why you wouldn't just hide the image from the screen reader instead? Like if you said, like, for example, like an area hidden true versus like alt, just no alt text because I guess you would still have to provide alt text because it is an image, but and like I said, I don't know if you know the answer to this. It just popped in my head right now. So
My first guess would be, and I don't know the answer either, to be honest with you. I don't know if I should say I don't know if there's one true answer to that.
okay.
My first guess would be you need that alt text. If that person is going to see that image at some point, whether it's a fly out, which some of them aren't accessible, or if it's some sort of animated or flashy kind of way to view an image on modal, for instance. Modals can be accessible too.
We're working through that right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those images need alt. To me, those images need alt text.
Yeah. You brought a nice segue for me to throw over to Christina or to both of you. Christina's done a lot of animations, and we kind of talked about this briefly, but like there's accessibility in terms of like stuff like the alt text, accessible forms, keyboard navigation, but motion is also something to take into account for in accessibility. I know I don't know all the methods of this, but I know there's the prefers reduced motion in CSS. I don't know if there's other ways you can do it as well, but um, just because you mentioned like the fly out and stuff like that, and I know because animations by nature move, I think Christina has some thoughts on this too. So just curious about both of your thoughts on this.
Yeah, go ahead, Christina.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple things that I know of that you can do, like the prefers reduced motion. You can do that now. That's a great thing to have. I love animations. I have lots of fun with them on my own time on sites. If it's not needed, you just really don't need it, because for a lot of people, they can't even go to that website. It causes all kinds of issues. They have migraines for hours. There's like, if it's not needed, you probably don't need to have it on there. Yeah, see. And stuff like, for a while, things that were popular, which are less now, which is a good thing, scroll jacking. If you're taking someone's they're scrolling on a page and you're deciding where they're going to go. They expect to go up and down or something, and you're taking them all over the place. That's really awful for a lot of people. I mean, it's awful, I think, for most people, the experience. But for people, that's it's a problem too. So you don't want to do that. Parallax scrolling was very popular, still pretty popular. You can limit that instead of making this like huge. Like, you don't have to necessarily get of it completely. But you do want to kind of limit that motion of what is being going at different times. Parallax scrolling is, there's something that's usually kind of stagnant and other things are kind of going, and they're going at different times. Again, that's something that can really affect people that are on a website. So you just want to be aware of those types of things. I think for a long time, even for myself, I wasn't aware of them until, someone had brought it up to me. And then after that, I was like, wow, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I don't need to have all these animations everywhere. I don't need to have this stuff happening just because it's cool. And I've heard of some people say, well, you just need to know because there's a lot of really neat websites out there. And then I go to for like inspiration just because they're cool and they're neat to look at. But what I've found a lot of people say is just, well, you need to know your audience, the type of people that will come to this, they're going to, they want to see this stuff. And I'm just like, well, then you're limiting it for a lot of people when you do that and you don't have options for. Like, I recently helped with an Adobe animation thing where they did for typography. And all we did was we decided, at the very beginning, they could turn off the sound and they could turn off the animations if they wanted to, and then they could go through it. Just like having those little options for people so that they can still enjoy, going through something if they want to without having horrible migraines for hours.
Yeah. I've seen cursor jacking. Please don't do that. People don't do that. Along with the scroll jacking. I leave a site immediately when I see, not because, my cursor turns into Hello Kitty or something. It's just, I want my cursor to remain my cursor. As big as a Hello Kitty fan is the next person, but not my cursor, please. Parallax, like you said, Christina, Parallax, there has been some instances of parallax that has triggered migraine headache in me. And, if you don't suffer from a migraine headache, consider yourself fortunate, because those can be a pain in the rear end. Animation, there are basic rules, and there is a great article on CSS tricks about that. And I don't have the link handy, but
see if we can find it.
Sure, you can find it.
Yeah.
3 flashes, or is it flashing per 3 seconds, I believe. Don't have anything that flashes like a strobe light at a nightclub, please. That can trigger seizures.
Yeah.
That flashing content. I've seen people I've seen people post tweets with flashing animated GIFs. Either put a trigger warning on there, or don't put it at all, because you never know who that other person is going to be on the other end looking at it. So animation's big.
Yeah. Yeah, gifs, gifs. Things weren't
Oh,
even
no, no, no,
something I
another
meant
can
to
of
thought.
worms.
Yeah, I'm not gonna get in this debate with you all. But something I didn't necessarily think of until because I'm the open source community manager, I saw like a bunch of issues where people were like, "Hey, it's cool that you added this," like because at some point, Dev, you could put like a little animated, like your little logo instead of if you wanted to have it animated, and they're like, "I can't go on the website because if there's comments from that person." It's just one after the other of these just like animated. Like, can we do and it's just like, yeah, that's a big problem. We should
Yeah.
think about that. So, yeah.
There was a website, and I don't know if anything had happened to the person that owned the website, but they had, and this is a long time ago, mind you, but they had a flashing background image on the
Okay.
entire page.
Oh no.
Uh, horrible idea.
Yeah.
So flashing content you want to keep in mind if there's and it's in that article too on CSS tricks.
I posted a bunch of them. Hopefully one of them is because they have a bunch of like stuff on accessible web
Yeah,
animations, which was by Valhead. They have like how to pause and play, which is important too. That's what we did with the Adobe, is that we gave the people the ability to just, you can have all these paused. They don't have to do anything. You don't have to have them play.
Yeah.
Prefers reduce motion and a bunch of other ones that I pasted
Yeah.
in there.
and
I've seen.
Val's great.
Mm-hmm.
Val's great. If you want to learn anything about animation from her and accessibility as far as animation goes, Val is one of the best. Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
So it's lasts more than 5 seconds.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So keep that in mind too.
Yeah.
I've
Sorry,
heard
I
it
didn't mean to
before.
cut you off.
Oh, no, no worries. I've heard it before, but I like what you said, just to reiterate it, Christina. Don't put animations on your site or application just to have like a cool animation. Like there should be intention behind the animation that it's meant to convey something or guide somebody
Mm-hmm.
versus just like, somebody
Yeah.
twirling sparklers, or I don't know. That was a very bad example.
I mean, there's the side of it where people like whimsy on the web, right? Like, if you like
Yeah.
whimsy, I'm kind of one of those people that like find delight in little things. But a lot of times, what I find for those sites is when you kind of like, you can find those things, or like you said, they lead you to them, and then that's fine. But if they're just like going off all the time on the site,
Yeah.
I think something because I've taught animation and I've been in the same boat of like, when you learn how to animate something, you get really excited and you're like, sweet, animate all the things. And I've seen students kind of, do that, or just people in general do that. And then I
Yeah.
think you kind of realize, hey, I need to pull back and not do that. And these are good reasons why you shouldn't.
Yeah. I just
The ones
dropped
I
it.
worry about them.
Head Todd.
No, no,
Right?
I was
Oh, I
just
was
gonna
gonna say.
say, you go. There's a slight delay. It's the main Montreal connection slowness.
It is. It is. We're so far apart. Anyways, I was just gonna say, the people that I worry about in animation, those that are prone to seizures. Those are the people that I worry about the most. Is when I see something that's animated and I say, oh, that's a
Yeah.
big problem. Those are the people that I worry about the most. So yeah, that's all I was gonna say. Back to you, Nick.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say, because Christina mentioned whimsy. Josh Como, who's a phenomenal web dev, CSS animator, and so on. He has a great site. I posted it in the chat in the stream. It's just like a fun site, and I think from what I've seen in it, everything's accessible. You can turn off the sound and stuff too, and he uses animations in a way where only where it kind of makes sense to have it. Like it's like we were saying, it's not just like my bad example of somebody just twirling sparklers on a website. So anyways,
So here's a good example too, along with the sparklers. I had a literal form, drop down an animated form dropped down, and I thought, is this Flash?
Okay.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it wasn't Flash. It dropped down, and then when I started to fill out the form, mind you, I almost decided not to because of that animation. The moment I put the first letter of my email address in that form field, the thing shook and already gave me an error.
Okay. Yeah.
Please don't do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Please don't do that.
Yeah, because I'm in like the kind of creative coding world. There's a lot of cool forms that people do where they do have these like little fun animations at the end and stuff. But I think we also just need to be aware that like not everyone can handle these kinds of things. Like I've seen some excellent ones that I think are so fun, but it doesn't mean that everyone can like use them and that they're accessible for everyone. Like, one of the things I do a lot of times if I'm like experimenting on CodePen and I just want to try some kind of animation, if I'm going to share it out, I do like a little PSA like, hey, if you have like so there's might be some flashing in this, or there might be like there's a lot of motion in this, please don't click on it if you're going to have like issues. It's just something I'm experimenting with, but it's not something I would put on a website for like a general website that people use because of these things. Like as much as I like the animations, as much as I think they're fun, it's not worth it, I think.
Yeah.
Keeping it simple works.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I guess that ties into what you mentioned about progressive enhancement as well.
Mhm.
Have it working, enhance it if you need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think that was a good topic on animation.
Yeah. And with that, we're getting close to our hard stop here. So I was thinking maybe we could wrap it up now. Todd, I just want to say I had a fantastic time just chatting today. Lots of fun. I apologize we didn't talk as much about lobster as we should have. We did touch on it though.
I think it's because we're all hungry.
Yeah, it made us all hungry. We needed to stop.
Yeah. But yeah, no, thanks so much for coming on. The only other thing I wanted to mention, I mentioned it before we went live on the stream, is we currently, because have been talking about accessibility today, we don't have closed captioning on the stream right now, and I do apologize for that. I don't feel good about that at all. I will say though, once we do have the recordings up on YouTube though, they do have closed captioning, so there is that. But it's something I'm working on. I just I have to put a bunch of time into that, so I just wanted to mention that because I feel a little hypocritical talking about accessibility and not having closed captioning. So
it can be time consuming. Yeah. And I thank you both for having me on. I had a great time talking accessibility and everything with you both. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. And thank you for everybody that showed up in the chat too. I appreciate that as well. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm going to be dropping Todd's links one more time for anyone who wants to follow. There's a bunch of great links.
Cool.
And there's plenty of lobster roll content on Twitter.
Yeah. Content warning, lobster. Just letting you know now.
Yeah, exactly.
But Todd's a great follower.
If you're hungry, don't go to Todd's Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you later.
All right.